Hello and good afternoon. Greetings from Amanda Eliasch's house here on Cheyne Walk in Chelsea. Here we are on a wet autumn day and talking about a topic that has fascinated people for a very, very long time. Again, the Shakespeare question. Did he exist? Was he real? Was he a woman?
Who was he?
Who was he? Will we ever know? So, Amanda, your interest in Shakespeare and whether Shakespeare was Shakespeare or whether Edward de Vere was Shakespeare, who was the person who got you interested in that?
I suppose when I was a little girl, I was 7 years old, and I was in Wiltshire. Actually, my grandfather, Sidney Gilliatt, who's a film director and writer and producer, he was mad on Shakespeare. And he would read me little bits all the time. You know, obviously snippets. He wasn't reading back to front, but he was reading little snippets. And basically, he got my interest fired up. But then when I started doing it at school, I came back and used to say, well, he hasn't written the plays. And he said, he has, and stop looking, you know, beneath them. He's written the plays. He was a man from the north, I'd say middle class.
He married quite well into a landowning family.
Yeah,
but he was the son of a
I'm talking about my grandfather was really, he was the son of the editor of the Evening Standard. They were quite literal. But in any case, I looked into it and I thought, you know, you write as a writer, you write about the things you know, you write.
Yes.
Look at you love gossips, you love exciting things. Everybody has their interests, and you love murders. Well, Edward de Vere liked dukes, kings,
yes.
Earls.
Well, that was his world, wasn't it?
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
He grew up
wasn't
in
Shakespeare's world.
His was the one of the grandest earldoms in the whole country.
It was the number one. They were hugely rich at that time.
And a very controversial family, if I recall.
Yes, and the father
lots of fighting and lots of locked up in the tower for a bit. And
they're always being locked up in the tower.
Traitors and vagabonds.
I know, they were traitors and vagabonds, and the father was surrounded by very, very learned people, and he was also surrounded by lawyers. The father loved lawyers. They were all lawyers, you know.
And there were a lot of different estates in lots of different locations, yes. And lots of debts coming and going.
Well,
and off with the Armada and all sorts of things he got himself involved in. And obviously, he spent a lot of time in Italy and France. And obviously, for people who believed that he could be Shakespeare...
We're talking about Edward de Vere.
Edward de Vere. You know, the fact that Hamlet has lots of references to...
Yes,
those regions.
The person who wrote Hamlet is really Shakespeare.
Yes.
Okay, and the person that fits this, because remember at the time you couldn't just go off to the sunny Riviera. There was you had to have actual permits.
Yes.
And he had to have permits to travel, and the Queen actually sent him there. There was one occasion he went on his own, and then he was brought back.
He was captured by pirates.
Yeah, exactly.
And the only thing he was allowed to keep on was his shirt.
Yes, exactly. So you can imagine the sight. Anyway, all the plays match his life. So I came to the conclusion.
And would you say, because he was considered quite a good writer in his own right,
yes,
that furthers your belief that he was the actual Shakespeare writer?
He was extremely clever. He went to Cambridge and Oxford. He learnt with Tim Smith. He learnt with Nathaniel Golding, who was an amazing translator, who was his uncle. He had the finest books in England with Lord Burleigh.
And would you say his reasoning for creating Shakespeare as the front for this was because in the nobility it was considered beneath you to be being the writer?
Yes, I mean at the time you couldn't write. You would lose your head if you were writing, and it was thought to be very common. And so he definitely wasn't. But all the earls are able to write. They're very literate. and so was Elizabeth.
And he was
I.
also funding theatres.
Yes.
And he was very involved with, was it Blackfriars?
Yes, absolutely. He was involved in the theatre world of London.
As
the
an
Chamberlain of
impresario,
England.
he was.
Well, he's also the Chamberlain of England.
Yes.
Now, we come back to Shakespeare. Shakespeare was born sort of 15 years later. He's a different time period. He's the son of a glove maker. He left home and came to London. He was indeed very good with property. He was good with litigation, but in a very elementary
Well, he
way.
was more of a he was more of a manager.
Yes.
He was more of an agent.
But they couldn't have done it without him.
Yes.
I mean,
So
whether or not he was in the knowledge, but he made a lot of money.
So do you believe Edward de Vere solely wrote all of the 36, 39 plays?
Yeah.
Were some of them a collective of others with him, or was it just him?
I really believe that it's a collaboration. You know, people were working around the table. Edward de Vere had a house called Fisher's Folly. He was writing with many different writers at the time, and it was a collaboration. They had dreams of turning England into the most eloquent country in Europe, and I think they succeeded actually. And they loved fashion and clothes, and it became forbidden to wear very elaborate clothing. It was in an interesting period of very interesting literal world, really. And
with the fact that there were, I think, around 29,000 words across all the works.
yes,
Somebody who lived in Stratford-upon-Avon, which was just a wool town, it wasn't I think around 1,500 people. It wasn't somewhere glamorous where lots of things went on, like Hamlet and all the rest of it, that all these Italian references. So Shakespeare supposedly never travelled abroad.
no, and
So
you would have had to.
how
make a
would he
mission.
have had knowledge of
Yes.
of these faraway exotic places as they very much were then?
I think that if you look into it, you will find that both Edward de Vere and William Shakespeare share a grandparent. And I think that's where we haven't discovered it, but we've discovered it with Touchstone in the Forest of Arden, and that he meets a yokel. And I think that's when he met William
Yes.
Shakespeare. Also, William Shakespeare was married at Billesley Manor. And in Billesley Manor, there's a bedroom dedicated to William Shakespeare. But what we think happened was that Edward de Vere had lost all his land and he was completely impoverished. And he was lent the house, Billesley Manor, for about a year and a half.
But it's rather like with Broadstairs with John Buchan, every bed in every corner of the place. John Buchan slept in, or Charles Dickens, and with Shakespeare, he probably slept in every bed in the land.
Well,
also.
exactly. If you go and study it, you'll probably find things. You'll definitely find all the earls moving around. Of course, they had horse and carts. It took a considerable time to go.
But Shakespeare was, from what I gathered, he wasn't limited means. He owned the second biggest house in the town.
By the end of his
Yes.
life, yes, he did. And you've got to question that because there are no
Yes.
rich writers.
Yes.
So, I think
who was backing him?
Well, I think he was the son of a mayor of Stratford, and I think he was paid
who
secretly.
was the organ grinder? You know, he was the monkey who was the
Yes,
organ grinder.
exactly.
That always follow the path to who is in charge.
Exactly. And and you mentioned that Shakespeare could be a woman. Well, women at the time were very learned. Elizabeth I was on the throne. She could speak about 5 or 6 languages. She was able to translate like nobody else. She sent little billets d'heure with translations.
Yes.
We're looking at a time when women were not, I think they're cleverer than they are today. I would argue that if Elizabeth I was in the room...
There were many of these noble women who were considered to be very good writers in their own regard.
And you mentioned Mary Sidney, and she was meant to be involved with the first folio in 1623, bearing in mind that Edward de Vere died in 1604 and Elizabeth had died in 1603. I was going to say the dating of the plays, because the dating of the plays are really, really important, because there's the dates that Stratford mentioned, which published, published, and then the dates that the De Vere Society mentioned, which is sort of performed.
Yes.
Everybody performed plays at the time. You remember that we were in candlelight at about 5 o'clock, as we are today. And so, of course, there were, in aristocratic households, plays performed. And so it was really fun. Basically,
Well, it was their version of Coronation Street or
exactly.
Love Island.
Exactly.
It was.
They were just a bit more intellectual than Love is Blind.
Yeah. Well, all of these things are just a modern interpretation of that. But,
exactly. You know, they didn't have TikTok, so they had to get together and, you know,
and they actually had to talk to one another, and they actually had to come up with ideas of their own with their minds.
Exactly, which you do very well in this modern day.
So,
are you on TikTok?
I don't know anything about TikTok. I have an account, but I've never ever used it.
Okay.
Have you used TikTok?
Absolutely. And my son uses TikTok. It's great.
Well, TikTok is something that has changed. In the one case that I'm very involved in, the Menendez brothers, during COVID, all these people who weren't even alive when they were on trial, when the murders happened in 1989, and those people became interested in the case purely because of TikTok. And
of course.
I've been looking at things about Shakespeare and Edward de Vere, and there is an awful lot now on TikTok.
Yeah, Phoebe de Vere, she calls herself Phoebe de Vere. She's called Phoebe Near. She is absolutely incredible. Yes. You want to learn anything out there, I'm telling you, go and watch her on TikTok.
Yes.
Because she's extraordinary, her knowledge, and she's very concise and very clear.
And that's what gets people to start thinking about this, and your society must be growing quite in a younger demographic.
Well, and the part of the De Vere Society, which I think I've got a very smart emblem on my shoulder. But in any case, he's extraordinary. And even if you didn't like Edward de Vere, you like Shakespeare, come along and check it out, because the more you study, the more you see flaws. And it's so exciting. And I've just done this film on it, as you know. Yes. And really, I mean, we've used AI to interpret bits that we couldn't get film on, but it's just extraordinary. It took us down deep
down the rabbit hole. Yes,
exactly, which we all love.
Yes.
If they're watching you, they're masters of the rabbit hole.
Yes, well, that's what, you know, with this, there are about 80 different people who are proposed as Shakespeare.
Well,
obviously, that is obviously ridiculous that there are 80 people. It's, you know, it's like the theories about Lord Lucan disappearing or Chergar the racehorse. There are theories that make more sense than others. And obviously there's the theory about Marlowe.
Yes.
But the dates...
Well, you know, he's younger. Yes. And really it was done at the end. There's clearly... I'm actually going to make a film on Marlowe, because I really like Marlowe. That's if Hector lets me, but we work together. But... you know, of course, he's very exciting. Yes. He's very rock and roll. He's always having fights and pubs.
The bar brawl, and did he flee because of the things he'd said and the fact he was potentially going to be charged with crimes, and he decided to reinvent himself.
Yes, he could have done that. And on top of that, you know, his work definitely appears in the plays. If you want to educate this lovely man, Matthew Steeples, you can all write to him and say it appears in this play and this play and this play. He definitely is involved. But how much, we don't know, because of course at the time we haven't got DNA as we have today.
Well, with Shakespeare, I recall in his will he talks about his properties, but he doesn't talk about his papers. And
well, this is very weird. He left a bed to his wife. Yes. Now, everybody else would have left their papers to the wife. Well, he could only do four signatures.
Yes,
you know?
and even the two daughters were illiterate.
Yeah.
And they couldn't sign anything. So this man of letters was not particularly good with the old quill.
He wasn't very articulate. But, you know, he has an enormous place to perform in Elizabethan history, and we must thank him. Because he did hide for the Earls, and the Earls really couldn't write at all. But of course they had the capability, but they of course couldn't be seen to be doing it.
So with regard to Bacon, what are your views on Bacon?
Bacon is extremely clever. I don't feel that he has his voice, but of course, as I said to you, they're all working together to make England a much more eloquent place.
The big names seem to have focused on him. The Jeremy Irons and all sorts of people have got very enthusiastic. Well, Charlie Chaplin.
Absolutely, because they don't like the idea of Edward de Vere, you know, because he was a flawed human being.
Yes.
I like Edward de Vere because he is flawed, and I think he was the son of Elizabeth I out of Thomas Seymour and Catherine Parr. Now people can argue that, but until we can do it,
one of our attendees at our dinner the other day, she feels that Edward de Vere is too wicked a person to have been the wonderful Shakespeare, because Shakespeare was Mr. Perfect in the great nation.
But you know,
Edward de Vere was a bit of a vagabond and a rogue. So
but
he was in the cad's corner. You know,
he was able to do everything. He's an extraordinarily clever man, and if you look at his own writing and everything that's written about him, it's a much bigger. It's much bigger knowledge than anyone could say over Bacon or indeed Marlowe. But Marlowe's interesting, and quite frankly, I'm quite sort of enthralled with him. I'm in love with Edward de Vere, but I could be very unfaithful very soon.
Oh, well, oh dear. The divorce court's beckon.
Exactly.
The lawyers will be happy.
They will be. And, you know, it's a very exciting adventure, and I suggest anyone sort of follows Matthew's new path. You know.
And which books would you recommend for someone wishing to start out studying
Charles
this?
Beauclerc's book, Margot Anderson's book. They're the best writers. And watch, first of all, Phoebe Near. See if you like it by watching Phoebe Near and enjoy it, really. And Ron Destro. Ron Destro, there are 4 writers. And they've written several books. I'm not going to go through all the books in this actual... just enjoy going down the rabbit hole and finding them.
And with regard to the feature films that have been inspired on this, such as is it called Innocence?
Well, there's Anonymous.
Anonymous, sorry,
yes,
not
Anonymous, which
Anonymous,
I think is one of the best books.
Yes.
But not best books, best films. And if you watch that, and you watch our film first, which is going to come out shortly, probably next year sometime, you know, keep an eye for them, because there are many people that are doing wonderful work on this at the moment. It's all exposing because of the internet.
And with regard to the Edward de Vere Society, how many members are there in the society, and
about
do they
500.
They meet often, or they share documents, or what is the main format of the society?
We meet twice a year.
Yep.
Everybody shares their work. You know, articles are sent in to the de Vere Society, and you can join it, and it's a very exciting society. And then there's the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship in America, which is also amazing. I think America's even better because I love going to America, and I love all these Americans being so passionate about it. There's Hank Whittemore, for instance, one of the most incredible men. He's written a book called The Monument. I said I wasn't going to mention any books, but anyway, he's written a book called The Monument.
Didn't PBS do quite a few series programs on the topic as well?
Yes, I think they've done it as well. I haven't watched them. Yes. You know, the main thing is when you do your own work, you don't want to go and watch a load of film by other people, because you get taken in by them.
Yes.
So it's better to be completely
it's better to go and check your own sources first.
Yes, exactly.
A fact is not a fact until you've checked it's a fact.
Yes, exactly.
A great quote from the talented Mr. Ripley.
Exactly. Well, you know, there are people out there that are absolutely extraordinary, doing amazing work. You know, there are people all over England doing it. Actually, they were sitting in the auditorium the other day screaming out when they felt that something was right or something was wrong. You know, there are people with passionate feelings on this subject.
Well, you know, since our dinner with the one lady from Devon, she has written essays to me about her views on Edward de Vere in particular, but the enthusiasm that once people go into a topic like this, it can take you in all sorts of angles, and you can meet a lot of new people. And I very much enjoyed meeting, you know, Ron, who I sat with after the dinner, and what an amazing man he is.
Yes, he is. He's extraordinary. We sort of worked together on my film. He would tell me when something's right and when something. He believes in the Tudor Prince theory that Edward de Vere was the son of Elizabeth I, hidden. And I think it all adds up. But you have to do your own studying,
yes.
okay? Because there's no point in me spouting
Yes.
a whole lot of facts.
This is Amanda speaking from the classroom, and here
Exactly,
she is in her headmistress's chair.
I'm not, yes, exactly. I don't want to be the headmistress. I want you to all go away and argue the facts with this lovely man, Matthew Steeples.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That was, I think, very productive, and I think a good introduction for our viewers into the world of, was Shakespeare real, or was he the biggest fraud in history?
I think so, absolutely. And it's been a pleasure seeing you this afternoon.
And thank you very much to Hector and to Amanda. That's a wonderful little introduction on this rainy autumn day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.